One of the constant themes in analyses of the whole sort of issue of the Arab Spring and what it's about, one of the constant themes is the comment that there is no concrete ideological content. Good 20th century reporters and analysts say, they don't tell us what they want. You know, what is their ideology? What is their program? Why can't they formulate a good Marxist ideology or a good environmentalist ideology? And so at the very beginning of the Arab Spring, there was a very perceptive article by Michael Blackman in the New York Times. And he sort of was commenting on this in particular. And he said, in 1979, the Iranian Revolution introduced the Muslim world to the force of political Islam, which frightened entrenched leaders. That ideology was still powerful, has still a powerful hold on people's imagination. But it goes on and says, but like Arabism and socialism before it, that is, pan-Arab nationalism by this guy who was the dictator in Egypt from 1954 until he died in 1970-71, Gamal Abdel Nasser. This was Arab nationalism and Arab socialism. But like Arabism and socialism before it, the political Islam of, I tend to like to look at faces. The political Islam of the Ayatollah Khomeini in Iran and the radicalized ideology of Osama bin Laden have failed to deliver in practical ways for the millions of people across the Middle East. That is, this new protest is looking at a sequence of failed ideologies. And instead what we then get is, within that framework of the world in which religion becomes increasingly important, instead what we get are people that don't look like that nice Arab nationalist, or who don't have long gray beards, but somebody like this person who is Tayyip Erdogan, who is the current head of the, quote, Islamically oriented or Islamist party in Turkey. You notice this is in some of the more paranoid expressions inside the Beltway. This guy is one of the leading threats because of his pan-Islamic long-term plans to impose Sharia and so on. Now, this does not look like the image that we are used to for thinking about, when we think about this Islamic fundamentalist who is going to impose Sharia. Usually, our idiom, when we're talking about Sharia and hand chopping and all of that, it's got to be somebody with a big long gray beard, with a turban and stuff like that. And so that when we start looking then at people like this, we're already saying maybe we're in a different world. And as we look, I like to think in terms of looking at the faces and looking at how do people present themselves in public in this non-ideological, in this new non-ideological way. I love the Malaysian silk shirt. This is Anwar Ibrahim, the leader of the opposition in Malaysia. Anwar, as a youth, as a student, was the organizer of the activist Islamic organization ABIM in Malaysia. He is still identified with an Islamically oriented opposition. But again, this is not somebody with a long gray beard and a turban. Now, this is somebody with not a very long gray beard. Sometimes our Malaysian friends don't have quite the full beard that the Ayatollah Khomeini had. But this is the ideological guide for the PAS party, the Pan-Islamic Party in Malaysia, Nikmat, who is probably the one that looks like what we should expect as the imposer of strict old-fashioned style Sharia. But he is the person that many people think of as being responsible intellectually for the transition of the Islamically oriented PAS party from a very conservative old-style idea of imposing Islamic law to a new style political program. This is probably theologically the most radical of the three guys that I just showed you in terms of Erdogan, Anwar Ibrahim, and Nikmat. But as we're looking at these, and we get to Arab Spring, this is the face of Arab Spring in terms of ideology and so on.